Marcus Rodriguez stood in the observation deck of the GFS Meridian, watching the swirling white death that was Kepler 442b through the reinforced viewport. The frozen Tempest below made Earth's worst blizzards look like gentle spring rain. Winds exceeding 800 km per hour carved through ice formations the size of mountains, while temperatures plummeted to -200 degrees Celsius. Somewhere in that hellscape, 3,000 beings from 12 different species were trapped in Mining Complex 7, and every expert in the galaxy had declared them dead. Foreman Rodriguez, came the voice of Admiral Vextari, the Zentorian fleet commander whose forearms gestured nervously as he spoke. I must emphasize that this mission is purely ceremonial. The Federation Council requires us to attempt a rescue, but no rational being expects success. The complex has been cut off for 6 standard days. Even if the structural integrity holds, which our calculations show is impossible, the life support systems cannot sustain that many beings for more than 4 days. Marcus scratched his graying beard and continued studying the storm patterns. At 43, he had spent more years working construction sites in the worst conditions Earth could offer than most species lived in total. The ruins of Detroit had taught him that sometimes the impossible was just another word for nobody tried hard enough yet. Your calculations assume normal operational parameters, Marcus said, his voice carrying the calm confidence that had made him legendary among Earth's construction crews. Tell me about the mining equipment down there. Dr. Silcara, the Valverian chief engineer whose crystalline form shimmered with anxiety, projected a holographic display. Standard deep core extraction units, atmospheric processors, 12 industrial fabricators, and a full complement of terraforming machinery. All designed for optimal efficiency under normal circumstances, but completely useless in these conditions. Marcus smiled, and several of the alien officers stepped back involuntarily. They had heard about human expressions, but seeing that particular combination of determination and barely contained violence was unsettling. Doc, what you call useless, I call raw materials. The human foreman turned to face the assembled command staff. Representatives from 8 different species, each more advanced than humanity in their respective fields, all wearing expressions that ranged from polite skepticism to outright disbelief. The Zentorians with their superior engineering, the Valverians with their crystalline perfection, the gasform Etherians with their energy manipulation capabilities, the insectoid Kaith with their hive mind efficiency, all convinced that this was a futile gesture. Here's what we're going to do, Marcus began, pulling up the complex's schematics on the central display. We're not going to rescue them. We're going to give them the tools to rescue themselves. Admiral Vextari's eye stalks twitched in confusion. Foreman, I do not understand. The storm makes any approach impossible. Our most advanced shuttles cannot penetrate the atmospheric disturbances. Even if they could, the surface conditions would destroy any equipment within minutes. That's because you're thinking like advanced civilizations, Marcus replied, highlighting specific sections of the mining complex. You're trying to use precise instruments to solve a brute force problem. Sometimes the solution isn't more advanced technology, it's older, simpler, and more stubborn. Dr. Silcara's form flickered with curiosity. What do you propose? Marcus pointed to the industrial fabricators shown in the schematics. These machines can build almost anything if you feed them the right materials and programming. The complex is sitting on a mountain of extracted minerals and metals. What they don't have is someone crazy enough to reprogram industrial equipment into survival gear during a planetary catastrophe. The communication systems are completely destroyed, pointed out Commander HYTH, the Kaith representative whose compound eyes reflected the storm's image in hundreds of fragments. How do you propose to transmit new programming to equipment we cannot contact? Marcus walked over to the ship's communication station and began examining the quantum relay system. We don't transmit. We deliver. The silence in the command center was deafening. Finally, Admiral Vextari spoke, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen too many impossible situations end badly. Foreman Rodriguez, I have commanded rescue operations across 47 systems. I have seen entire fleets lost attempting to save single ships. What you are suggesting defies every principle of tactical operations and survival probability. Good, Marcus said, already working on the communication console with the easy confidence of someone who had jerry-rigged solutions from scrapyard parts for decades. If it followed normal principles, someone would have tried it already. The human began pulling up technical specifications for the ship's emergency transponders, small, durable devices designed to survive crashes and transmit location data. Each one was about the size of a baseball and built to withstand impacts that would destroy most other equipment. These transponders, Marcus said, highlighting their construction details, are designed to survive atmospheric entry, ground impact, and hostile environmental conditions for up to 30 days. They're also programmable and carry enough processing power to run basic fabrication software. Dr. Silkera's crystalline form brightened with understanding. You want to program them with fabrication instructions and drop them into the storm. Exactly. But not just any instructions. Marcus began working on the transponder programming interface, his fingers moving with the precision of someone who had learned to make broken things work through pure determination. I'm going to program them with instructions to build a thermal lance system using the mining equipment's power cores and extraction tools. The alien officers exchanged glances that clearly communicated their shared thought. The human had finally revealed the insanity that his species was known for. Commander HYTH spoke first. A thermal lance system would require precise engineering tolerances and specialized materials that are not available in a mining complex. Under normal circumstances, yes, Marcus agreed, never pausing in his work. But these aren't normal circumstances. When you're trapped under a mountain of ice with industrial equipment and 3,000 lives at stake, precision becomes a luxury you can't afford. What matters is heat, power, and the will to make it work. Admiral Vextari approached the human foreman, his forearms clasped behind his back in a gesture that indicated serious concern. Even if your transponders survive the journey to the surface, and even if the survivors can follow your instructions, what makes you believe they can construct something that our best engineers consider impossible under optimal conditions? Marcus stopped typing and looked up at the Admiral. For a moment, the command center was filled with the quiet intensity that construction workers recognized as the calm before someone moved a mountain through sheer bloody-mindedness. Admiral, let me tell you something about trapped people with limited time and unlimited motivation. I once watched a construction crew in Detroit build a working crane out of car parts, rebar, and pure spite because the city said it couldn't be done and we had a deadline. When people are facing death, they don't worry about optimal conditions. They worry about what works. The human turned back to his programming, adding layers of redundancy and alternative approaches to every instruction. Besides, they're not building a precision instrument. They're building a way out. The lance just needs to be hot enough and stable enough to cut through the ice formations blocking their escape routes. It doesn't need to win any engineering awards. Dr. Silkera moved closer to examine Marcus's work, her crystalline form reflecting the scrolling code in rainbow patterns. Your programming includes instructions for constructing the lance using 17 different possible combinations of available materials. 18, actually, Marcus corrected, adding another subroutine. And 3 different power configurations depending on what's still functional down there. The beauty of industrial equipment is that it's built to be reliable and adaptable. These machines were designed to work in harsh conditions and keep running even when half their systems are damaged. The alien engineer studied the code more carefully, her form brightening as she began to understand the elegant simplicity of the human's approach. You are not just providing instructions for construction. You are providing a complete troubleshooting protocol that accounts for equipment failures, material shortages, and operational errors. That's because I've never met a piece of equipment that couldn't be fixed, modified, or completely rebuilt if you were stubborn enough, Marcus replied. The folks down there aren't just going to follow instructions. They're going to improve on them, adapt them, and probably come up with solutions I never thought of. All they need is a starting point and the confidence that it can be done. Admiral Vextari watched the human work with growing fascination. In his decades of command, he had seen countless rescue attempts fail because they relied on complex solutions that broke down under real-world conditions. But this human was approaching the problem like a construction project, building in redundancy, planning for failure, and designing solutions that could be implemented by people under extreme stress with limited resources. How long will it take to program all 18 configurations? The Admiral asked. Already done, Marcus said, stepping back from the console. The transponders are ready for deployment. Each one contains complete instructions, material lists, safety protocols, and enough alternative approaches to account for any reasonable equipment failure or resource shortage. Commander HYTH's compound eyes focused on the human with new interest. You completed a comprehensive engineering program in less than 1 standard hour. Our best programmers would require days to develop such a system. Marcus shrugged, the gesture somehow conveying both modesty and absolute confidence. I didn't develop a new system. I adapted existing protocols that I've used on construction sites for 20 years. When you've had to figure out how to move a 50-ton beam with a broken crane, a damaged foundation, and a supervisor breathing down your neck, programming a thermal lance becomes just another Tuesday. The command staff watched as Marcus loaded the programmed transponders into the ship's emergency deployment system. Each device would be dropped individually to maximize the chances that at least one would reach the complex intact and be found by the survivors. There is still the matter of the storm itself, Dr. Silkera pointed out. Even if the survivors can build your thermal lance system, the atmospheric conditions will make any escape attempt extremely dangerous. Marcus pulled up the meteorological data, studying the storm patterns with the same intensity he had once applied to reading weather conditions at construction sites during Detroit's infamous winters. The storm isn't random. It has patterns, cycles, and brief periods of relative calm. What we need is to give them not just the tools to escape, but the information to time their escape. The human began programming additional instructions into a final transponder, not construction details this time, but meteorological analysis and timing protocols. Weather prediction algorithms designed not for scientific accuracy, but for practical application by people who needed to know exactly when they had a 15-minute window to move 3,000 beings to safety. This transponder contains a complete weather analysis system and escape timing protocols, Marcus explained. It will monitor local conditions and signal the optimal moments for evacuation. The thermal lance will clear their path, but they need to know when the path is safe to use. Admiral Vextari studied the deployment trajectory calculations, his military mind automatically analyzing the mission parameters. The transponders will be scattered across a wide area by the storm winds. How can we ensure the survivors will find them? We don't, Marcus said simply. We make sure they can't miss them. The human modified the transponder programming one final time, adding activation protocols that would cause each device to emit bright flashes and audible signals once they detected the complex's power signature. Not sophisticated location technology, but simple, reliable, and impossible to overlook. Each transponder will activate when it gets within a kilometer of the complex and start signaling like a construction site warning beacon. Bright, loud, and persistent. The survivors will find them because the transponders will make sure they can't be ignored. The deployment system signaled ready, and Marcus looked around the command center at the assembled alien officers. Each represented civilizations that had mastered technologies beyond human understanding, yet all were waiting for a construction foreman from a backwater planet to attempt the impossible. Foreman Rodriguez, Admiral Vextari said formally, "You have my permission to begin deployment. May your confidence prove justified." Marcus activated the deployment sequence, sending 18 small transponders into the howling chaos of Kepler 442b's frozen hell. Each one carried the accumulated knowledge of 20 years spent making impossible things work through determination, ingenuity, and the absolute refusal to accept that something couldn't be done. "Admiral," Marcus said as they watched the transponders disappear into the storm, "confidence doesn't have anything to do with it. Those people down there are going to survive because giving up isn't an option. The transponders just give them the tools to make survival a little more likely." The command center fell silent as they watched the storm rage below, each officer dealing with the strange new feeling of hope based not on advanced technology or superior firepower, but on one human's unshakable belief that the impossible was just another word for "nobody tried hard enough yet." And, in the depths of the frozen Tempest, 18 small beacons began their journey toward 3,000 trapped souls who were about to learn what human stubbornness could accomplish when combined with industrial equipment and the absolute refusal to die quietly. 12 hours after the transponder drop, the GFS Meridian's communication array picked up the first signal from Mining Complex 7. It wasn't a distress call or a status report, it was the rhythmic pounding of industrial equipment being used in ways its designers never intended, transmitted through the planet's crust as seismic vibrations that somehow managed to carry a message: we're alive, we're working, and we're not giving up. Marcus stood in the communication center, translating the seismic patterns for the alien command staff like a construction foreman reading the vibrations of heavy machinery. "That's a fabricator running at maximum output," he explained, pointing to the regular pulse pattern on the seismic display. "And that irregular hammering, they're doing manual modifications. Someone down there found our instructions and decided to improve on them." Dr. Silkera's crystalline form flickered with amazement. The seismic signature suggests they are operating equipment beyond its designed parameters. The power readings are 30% higher than manufacturer specifications. good," Marcus said with satisfaction. "Means they're taking this seriously." Admiral Vextari studied the data with growing concern. "Foreman, operating equipment at those levels risks catastrophic failure. If their power systems overload, they could lose life support entirely." Marcus turned to face the Admiral, his expression carrying the patient confidence of someone who had seen equipment pushed far beyond its limits and lived to tell about it. "Admiral, let me explain something about industrial equipment and the people who use it. Those machines weren't built just to meet specifications, they were built by engineers who knew that somewhere, someday, someone would need them to do more than the manual said they could. There's always more capacity built in than the safety ratings admit." The human pulled up the technical specifications for the mining complex's fabrication systems, highlighting power consumption ratings and structural tolerances. These fabricators are rated for continuous operation at 60% capacity under optimal conditions. But they're designed to handle brief periods at 120% capacity for emergency operations. What the survivors are doing isn't reckless, it's exactly what the equipment was built for. Commander HYTH approached the seismic display, his compound eyes tracking the various vibration patterns. The signals suggest coordinated activity across multiple sections of the complex. How are they organizing without functional communication systems? Same way construction crews have coordinated for thousands of years, Marcus replied. They're using the tools and materials around them to create their own communication system. Those fabricators aren't just building thermal lance components, they're building signal relays, message boards, and probably a dozen other things I haven't thought of. The seismic activity continued for 6 more hours, gradually shifting from the regular patterns of manufacturing to the irregular rhythms of construction and assembly. Marcus interpreted each change for the command staff, his experience with industrial sites allowing him to read the underground story like a technical manual written in vibrations. Now they're moving heavy components, Marcus said as a new pattern appeared on the displays. That deep, slow rhythm, they're using the mining equipment's transport systems to position the thermal lance. Smart. They're not trying to build it where they found the materials. They're building it where they need it. Dr. Silkera studied the power consumption data flowing from the complex's emergency monitoring systems. The energy output suggests they have successfully constructed not just one thermal lance, but multiple units. The power distribution patterns indicate they are operating at least 4 separate high-energy systems. Marcus nodded approvingly. They figured out what I was hoping they would. One lance gives you one escape route. 4 lances give you options, redundancy, and the ability to work on multiple obstacles simultaneously. Whoever's leading this operation down there understands how to manage a complex project under extreme conditions. The alien officers watched their instruments with growing amazement as the seismic activity revealed the scope of the survivors' engineering efforts. What had begun as a desperate attempt to follow emergency instructions had evolved into a comprehensive reconstruction project that was turning the mining complex into something entirely different. Foreman Rodriguez, Admiral Vextari said slowly, the survivors appear to be doing more than simply building escape equipment. The power signatures suggest they are modifying the complex's fundamental systems. Marcus studied the data more carefully, recognizing patterns that reminded him of construction sites where crews had to completely rebuild infrastructure while still using it. They're not just building a way out. They're building a way to control their environment. Those thermal lances aren't just cutting tools, they're being integrated into the complex's heating and power systems. The human's analysis was confirmed 18 hours later when the complex's automated monitoring systems came back online and began transmitting detailed status reports. What they revealed defied everything the command staff thought they knew about emergency survival procedures. The survivors hadn't just followed Marcus's instructions, they had transformed them into something unprecedented. The thermal lance system had been expanded into a comprehensive environmental control network that was actively fighting the frozen Tempest. Instead of simply clearing escape routes, they were creating a stable microenvironment within the storm itself. This is impossible, Dr. Silkera whispered, her crystalline form pulsing with disbelief as she studied the complex's new configuration. They have converted mining equipment into terraforming technology. The power requirements alone should have overwhelmed their systems days ago. Marcus examined the technical readouts with the satisfaction of someone whose faith in practical engineering had been vindicated. It's not impossible. It's just good construction management. They didn't try to build something new, they rebuilt what they had into something better. The data showed that the survivors had connected their thermal lances to the complex's geothermal taps, using the planet's own heat to power their environmental systems. The mining equipment's extraction tools had been converted into heat distribution networks, while the fabricators continued producing components to expand and improve the system. They're not just surviving the storm, Marcus realized. They're turning it into their power source. Admiral Vextari stared at the readouts with the expression of someone whose understanding of the possible had just been fundamentally altered. Foreman, how did they accomplish this? Our best engineers estimated that such a project would require months of planning and specialized equipment worth more than the complex itself. Because your engineers were thinking like engineers, Marcus replied. The folks down there were thinking like people who were going to die if they didn't make it work. There's a difference. The human pulled up the complex's modified schematics, showing how the survivors had essentially rebuilt their entire facility around the thermal lance technology. Look at this. They didn't try to build a perfect system. They built a working system and, then, kept improving it. Every component serves multiple purposes. Every modification solved multiple problems. This isn't advanced engineering, it's good project management under pressure. Commander HYTH studied the structural modifications with growing respect for the survivors' ingenuity. They have created redundant systems for every critical function. If any component fails, the network can reroute around it automatically. That's because whoever's running this project down there understands that in emergency conditions, everything breaks eventually, Marcus explained. You don't build one perfect solution, you build 6 imperfect solutions that can back each other up. The communication from the complex came 62 hours after the transponder drop, transmitted through their newly constructed communication array with crystal clarity that made the ship's advanced systems seem almost primitive by comparison. GFS Meridian, this is Mining Complex 7. Supervisor Chen reporting. All personnel accounted for and in good health. Complex systems operating at optimal efficiency. We are ready to begin evacuation operations at your convenience. The command center fell silent. Admiral Vextari spoke first, his voice carrying a mixture of relief and bewilderment. Supervisor Chen, please confirm your status. Our sensors indicate significant modifications to your facility. Confirmed, Meridian. We received your foreman's instructions and made some improvements. The thermal lance system has been integrated into our environmental controls. We now have full climate management capabilities and can maintain safe conditions indefinitely. The storm is no longer a threat to complex operations. Dr. Silkara moved closer to the communication console, her form brightening with scientific curiosity. Supervisor Chen, how did you achieve stable power output with industrial fabrication equipment? Simple engineering, document. We connected the thermal lances to the geothermal grid and used the mining extractors as heat exchangers. The fabricators are now producing expansion components on a continuous cycle. Every hour, our system gets a little more efficient and a little more powerful. Marcus keyed the communication system. Chen, this is Foreman Rodriguez. How long can you maintain current operations? As long as needed, Rodriguez. We're not just surviving down here, we're improving. Your instructions gave us the foundation, but the team has been building on it. We've got ideas for improvements that would make this place more efficient than it was before the storm. The human foreman smiled, recognizing the tone of someone who had discovered that impossible problems sometimes had surprisingly elegant solutions. What kind of improvements, Chen? Well, we figure if we can survive a Category 9 Tempest and maintain full operations, we can probably handle normal mining operations a lot better than before. The thermal lance system could double our extraction efficiency when the storm clears. The environmental controls would let us work in conditions that used to shut us down completely. Admiral Vextari listened to the conversation with growing amazement. Supervisor Chen, are you saying that the emergency modifications have actually improved the complex's operational capabilities? That's exactly what I'm saying, Admiral. Rodriguez's thermal lance design isn't just emergency equipment, it's revolutionary technology. We've essentially turned a mining operation into a terraforming installation. When this storm clears, Complex 7 is going to be the most efficient and resilient mining facility in the sector. The implications of Chen's statement began to register across the command center. What had started as a desperate rescue mission had accidentally resulted in a technological breakthrough that could transform industrial operations across the galaxy. Dr. Selkara was the first to grasp the full significance. If their modifications can be replicated, every industrial facility in harsh environments could benefit from this technology. Mining operations on hostile worlds, research stations in extreme conditions, even military installations in combat zones. Marcus nodded, understanding finally dawning on him. Chen, send us complete schematics of your modifications. I think we need to have a longer conversation about what you folks built down there. Already prepared, Rodriguez. We've been documenting everything as we go. Figured somebody would want to know how we turned emergency equipment into next-generation industrial technology. Fair warning though, replicating this system requires people who aren't afraid to rebuild equipment while they're still using it. Commander HYTH approached the communication console. Supervisor Chen, do you still require evacuation? The pause before Chen's response told the entire story. Meridian, we appreciate the rescue effort, but, honestly? We're probably safer and more comfortable down here than we'd be on a ship. The complex is running better than it ever has. If it's all the same to you, we'd like to ride out the rest of the storm and keep working on improvements. Admiral Vextari exchanged glances with his command staff, each recognizing that they had just witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. A routine rescue mission had become a technological revolution, and the people they had come to save had instead taught them what was possible when human determination met practical engineering. Supervisor Chen, the Admiral said formally, you and your team have not only survived impossible conditions, you have thrived in them. The Federation will want to study your modifications and possibly implement them across our industrial network. Happy to help, Admiral. But, credit where credit's due, we just followed Rodriguez's instructions and kept building on them. If you want to understand what happened here, you need to understand that humans don't just solve problems. They solve problems and, then, figure out how to turn the solution into something better than what they started with. As the communication ended, Marcus looked around the command center at the alien officers who were still processing what they had witnessed. The rescue mission was complete, but the real story was just beginning. Complex 7 had become proof that human engineering wasn't just effective, it was transformative. And, somewhere in the depths of the frozen Tempest, 3,000 beings continued working to turn an impossible survival situation into the foundation of the galaxy's next great technological leap forward. 6 months after the Kepler 442b incident, Marcus Rodriguez found himself standing in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Trade Federation, watching as representatives from 47 star systems debated the implications of what the media had dubbed the Rodriguez method. The mining complex modifications had been successfully replicated on 18 different worlds, each installation exceeding performance expectations by margins that defied conventional engineering wisdom. The human approach to industrial engineering represents a paradigm shift, declared Senator Velvar, the Zentorian representative whose forearms gestured emphatically as he spoke. Traditional Federation engineering focuses on optimization within established parameters. Human engineering focuses on redefining the parameters themselves. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his assigned seat, still wearing the same work clothes he had worn during the rescue mission. The Federation had offered him formal diplomatic attire, but he had politely declined. He was here as a construction foreman, not a politician, and he intended to look the part. Dr. Selkara approached the podium, her crystalline form reflecting the assembly hall's lights and rainbow patterns as she presented her analysis. The technological improvements documented across all Rodriguez method installations share common characteristics that suggest fundamental principles rather than isolated innovations. Redundant systems, adaptive functionality, and integration with existing infrastructure rather than replacement of it. The Valvarian engineer activated a holographic display showing comparative efficiency data from installations across the galaxy. Facilities using Rodriguez method modification show average productivity increases of 68%, maintenance cost reductions of 42%, and operational uptime improvements of 83%. These figures are unprecedented in Federation industrial history. From his seat in the observers section, Marcus watched the alien representatives struggle to understand how simple construction techniques could produce such dramatic results. The truth was that humans didn't approach engineering problems like other species. They approached them like survival problems, and survival problems always had solutions if you were willing to get creative enough. Foreman Rodriguez, came the voice of Admiral Kexthera, the Etherian fleet commander whose gaseous form shimmered with barely contained excitement. The Defense Council has reviewed your work and wishes to discuss potential military applications. Marcus stood, his movement causing a ripple of attention throughout the vast assembly hall.
Admiral, with respect, I'm a construction foreman. I build things. I don't blow them up.
We are not interested in destruction applications, Admiral Kexthera clarified, her form brightening with enthusiasm.
We are interested in construction applications under hostile conditions.
The Federation faces ongoing challenges in establishing and maintaining installations in combat zones, hostile environments, and rapidly changing tactical situations. The Admiral activated another holographic display, this one showing Federation military bases across contested sectors.
Current doctrine requires extensive preparation time and specialized equipment for base construction.
The Rodriguez method suggests that effective installations can be built rapidly using available materials and adaptive engineering principles. Marcus studied the tactical displays with the same intensity he had once applied to construction site surveys. The military's engineering challenges were familiar: limited time, hostile conditions, inadequate resources, and the absolute necessity of making things work despite impossible circumstances.
What exactly are you asking for, Admiral? We want you to train our engineers in human construction methodology, Admiral Kexthera replied.
Not just the technical aspects, but the fundamental approach to problem solving under extreme conditions. Senator Melthera, the insectoid representative from the Caith Collective, spoke from her position at the Species Council table. The Federation's expansion into unexplored sectors has been limited by our inability to establish reliable infrastructure quickly enough to support extended operations.
Your methods could revolutionize our colonization capabilities.
Marcus looked around the assembly hall, recognizing the mixture of hope and desperation in the expressions of beings whose civilizations had reached the limits of their conventional approaches. They weren't just asking for technical knowledge, they were asking for a completely different way of thinking about what was possible. I can teach your engineers how to work like humans, Marcus said finally. But you need to understand that it's not just about techniques.
It's about attitude.
Human engineering works because humans assume that everything is fixable, improvable, and adaptable if you're willing to work hard enough and think creatively enough.
Dr. Silkera's form flickered with curiosity. Can such attitudes be taught to non-human engineers?
Doc, I've worked construction sites with beings from a dozen different species over the past few months.
Attitude isn't species-specific.
It's about whether you're willing to see problems as opportunities to build something better. Marcus paused, considering his words carefully. What I can teach is how to look at any situation and ask, what can I build with what I have, instead of, what do I need to build what I want? The assembly hall buzzed with quiet conversations as representatives discussed the implications among themselves.
Finally, Chancellor Zexthony, the assembly's presiding officer, called for order.
Foreman Rodriguez, the Federation Council wishes to offer you a position as Chief Engineering Consultant with full authority to establish training programs and oversee implementation of human construction methodologies across Federation installations. Your compensation would include full citizenship privileges, access to Federation technological resources, and command authority over engineering operations. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering an offer that would make him one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Finally, he shook his head. Chancellor, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not administrator material.
What I am good at is training people and solving problems.
How about this instead? Give me a ship, a crew of engineers who want to learn, and the authority to go wherever there's an impossible engineering problem that needs solving.
Admiral Kexthera's gaseous form swirled with excitement. A mobile engineering response unit. Rapid deployment to crisis situations with full autonomy to implement whatever solutions are necessary.
Exactly, Marcus said. But not just crisis response. Research and development in the field. Every impossible situation teaches you something new about what's actually possible.
Give me the resources to turn every emergency into a learning opportunity.
Senator Velther stood, his forearms gesturing in the Zentorian equivalent of applause.
The concept has merit.
A specialized unit that combines emergency response with technological development could provide solutions for problems we have not yet encountered. Dr. Silkera approached the podium again, her crystalline form bright with scientific enthusiasm.
Foreman Rodriguez, such a unit would require engineers from multiple species with diverse specializations. Are you prepared to work with a truly integrated crew?
Marcus smiled, remembering the mixed species construction crews that had helped implement the Rodriguez method modifications across the galaxy.
Doc, the best construction crews are always mixed crews.
Different species see different solutions to the same problems. What I need are engineers who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty and aren't too proud to learn from people who do things differently.
Commander Thekmar, the military representative from the Draknari Empire, leaned forward in his seat.
Such a unit would need to operate in potentially hostile territory. The crew would require combat training and defensive capabilities. Then, we give them combat training and defensive capabilities, Marcus replied matter-of-factly. A construction site is already a dangerous place. Adding hostile aliens just means we need to be a little more careful about perimeter security. The casualness of Marcus's response to military threats caused another ripple of conversation throughout the assembly. The human was discussing combat operations with the same calm confidence he had shown when talking about industrial engineering. Admiral Kexthera spoke again, her gaseous form taking on a more structured appearance as she focused her attention. Foreman Rodriguez, commanding such a unit would make you responsible for the lives of hundreds of beings across multiple species. Are you prepared for that responsibility? Marcus thought about the 3,000 beings who had survived Kepler 442b because someone had been willing to try the impossible, and the thousands more who now worked in safer, more efficient facilities because those survivors had been willing to keep building on what they had learned. Admiral, I'd been responsible for lives on construction sites for 20 years. The job doesn't change just because the construction site might be in space or under hostile fire. Keep people safe, keep them working, and keep them learning. Everything else is just details. Chancellor Zexthoni consulted with the council members before speaking again. The Federation Council approves the establishment of the Emergency Engineering Response Unit under your command. You will have access to our most advanced vessel technologies, unlimited recruitment authority, and complete autonomy in mission selection and execution. Marcus nodded acceptance of terms that would have overwhelmed most beings, but which sounded to him like the best construction job in the galaxy. I'll need some time to put together my crew and get the ship configured properly. Figure about 3 months to get everything set up and running. Dr. Silkera's form flickered with curiosity. What specifications do you require for the vessel? Big enough to carry serious industrial equipment, tough enough to survive getting shot at, and simple enough that my crew can rebuild it from spare parts if necessary, Marcus replied. Everything else is just luxury. The engineering requirements that Marcus described would result in a vessel unlike any other in Federation service, part research ship, part mobile factory, part fortress, and entirely designed around the principle that any problem could be solved with enough determination and the right tools. Foreman Rodriguez, Admiral Kexthera said formally, you will have command of the Federation vessel Prometheus, currently under construction at the Vega shipyards. The ship incorporates human engineering principles with Federation technology to create a platform specifically designed for your mission requirements. Marcus stood again, this time with the bearing of someone who had just accepted responsibility for turning the impossible into the routine on a galactic scale. Admiral, Chancellor, representatives, I appreciate your confidence. Give me 6 months, and I'll show you what human engineering can accomplish when it has unlimited resources and interesting problems to solve. As the assembly session concluded, Marcus found himself surrounded by representatives from dozens of species, each eager to discuss potential missions for his new unit. Engineers wanted to learn his techniques, military commanders wanted his capabilities deployed to their sectors, and scientists wanted to study his methods. Through it all, Marcus maintained the calm confidence of someone who had spent his career making broken things work and impossible things happen. The galaxy was about to learn that giving a human construction foreman unlimited resources and interesting problems wasn't just an opportunity, it was a recipe for transforming what everyone thought was possible. The Emergency Engineering Response Unit would become legendary not because it could solve any problem, but because it would turn every problem it solved into the foundation for solving even bigger problems. And, at the center of it all would be a foreman from Detroit who had never met a challenge he couldn't build his way through. The galaxy was about to discover what human engineering could accomplish when it was given the resources to dream big and the authority to make those dreams reality. The Federation vessel Prometheus was unlike anything that had ever been built in the Vega shipyards. At nearly 2 kilometers long and designed around the radical principle that form should follow function rather than aesthetic appeal, she looked more like a mobile industrial complex than a traditional starship. Her hull bristled with fabrication arrays, construction equipment, and defensive systems that had been integrated so thoroughly that it was impossible to tell where the shipbuilding ended and the engineering began. Marcus Rodriguez stood in the ship's main engineering bay, watching his carefully selected crew work through their first integrated training exercise. 47 beings from 19 different species, all chosen not for their academic credentials or military experience, but for their demonstrated ability to make things work under impossible conditions. Foreman Rodriguez, called Chief Engineer Vexstar, a Centaurian whose forearms moved with mechanical precision as she calibrated a matter compiler. The fabrication systems are operating at optimal efficiency, but I am concerned about the power distribution networks. They appear to lack the redundancy protocols typical of Federation designs. Marcus walked over to examine her work, noting the careful attention to detail that characterized all of Vexstar's projects.
Chief, show me what you think is missing.
Vexstar activated a holographic display of the ship's power grid, highlighting areas where traditional Federation engineering would have included backup systems and redundant pathways.
Here, and here.
Standard protocol requires triple redundancy for all critical systems, but the Prometheus design appears to rely on adaptive routing rather than predetermined backup configurations. That's because predetermined backup configurations assume you know what's going to fail and how, Marcus replied, pointing to the adaptive routing nodes scattered throughout the ship's systems.
This ship is designed to handle problems we haven't thought of yet.
Instead of building specific solutions for specific failures, we built a system that can rebuild itself around any failure. Dr. Silkara approached from across the engineering bay, her crystalline form reflecting the light from dozens of active workstations. The human approach to system design continues to fascinate me.
Rather than preventing failure, you plan for adaptation after failure occurs. Not just adaptation, document improvement.
Marcus gestured toward the ship's central fabrication complex, where automated systems were constantly producing spare components, upgrade modules, and entirely new pieces of equipment based on the crew's ongoing projects.
Every time something breaks, we don't just fix it. We rebuild it better than it was before. The diversity of the Prometheus crew was immediately apparent as Marcus moved through the engineering bay.
Insectoid Kaith worked alongside gaseous Etherians, while crystalline Velvarians collaborated with amphibious Aquarians on projects that would have been impossible without their combined perspectives and abilities.
Foreman. The voice belonged to Specialist Thekmor, a Draknari engineer whose reptilian features were animated with excitement as he worked on a weapon system integration project. The defensive arrays are responding beautifully to the modular design principles.
Watch this. Thekmor activated a holographic display showing the ship's defensive capabilities, but, instead of traditional fixed-mount weapons, the Prometheus featured construction equipment that could be rapidly reconfigured for combat use. Fabrication beams became cutting lasers, matter compilers became projectile weapons, and industrial manipulator arms became precision targeting systems. The beauty of this approach, Thekmor explained, his enthusiasm evident despite his species' typically reserved nature, is that our defensive capabilities improve every time we solve an engineering problem. Each new tool we build, each new technique we develop, adds to our combat effectiveness without requiring dedicated military hardware.
Marcus nodded approvingly. That's the idea, Specialist.
A construction ship that can defend itself, or a warship that can build whatever it needs to win.
Depends on how you look at it.
Commander Yulthara, the Etherian officer who served as the ship's tactical coordinator, drifted over to join the conversation. Her gaseous form shimmered with curiosity as she studied the defensive system schematics.
This integration philosophy could revolutionize military engineering. Traditional combat vessels require extensive support infrastructure and predetermined equipment loadouts.
The Prometheus could adapt its capabilities to any tactical situation.
Could and will, Marcus confirmed.
But, remember, we're not primarily a military vessel.
We're an engineering response unit that happens to be very well armed.
Our job is to solve impossible problems, not to win impossible battles. The distinction was important to Marcus, and he had made it clear during crew selection that the Prometheus would never be used as a traditional warship. Their weapons were tools, their defenses were practical necessities, and their mission was always construction rather than destruction. Foreman Rodriguez, called Specialist Kixera, an Aquarian whose water-breathing physiology required her to work from a specialized environmental suit.
The environmental systems integration is complete.
We now have the capability to establish life support for any known species configuration within 30 minutes of arrival at a new location.
The environmental systems represented one of the Prometheus' most ambitious engineering projects.
Rather than designing separate life support systems for each species, the crew had developed adaptive environmental processors that could analyze and replicate any atmospheric, gravitational, or chemical requirements in real time.
How's the testing going, specialist?
Marcus asked, examining the complex array of atmospheric processors and gravity generators that lined the environmental systems bay. Better than expected, Kixera replied, her suit's communication system translating the complex harmonics of Aquarian speech into standard federation. We can now support environments ranging from methane-breathing crystalline beings to energy-based lifeforms that require electromagnetic field matrices.
The system learns from each new species we encounter and adds their requirements to its database. Dr. Silkara's form brightened with scientific interest. Such adaptability suggests that the Prometheus could serve as a contact vessel for first encounters with unknown species.
That's exactly what it suggests, Doc, Marcus agreed.
Why limit ourselves to helping species we already know about?
The galaxy is full of beings we haven't met yet, and some of them probably have interesting engineering problems that need solving. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the ship's communication systems. Marcus moved to the central command console, where Chief Communications Officer Zethara, a Kaith whose compound eyes could track multiple data streams simultaneously, was coordinating with Federation Command. Foreman Rodriguez, we have received our first official mission assignment, Zethara reported, her mandibles clicking with excitement.
The Rigel system is experiencing cascade failures in their orbital shipbuilding facilities. 3 major installations are offline, and conventional repair efforts have failed.
Marcus studied the mission briefing, noting the complex interaction of technical failures that had brought one of the Federation's most important industrial centers to a complete halt.
What's the timeline, Chief?
The facilities produce 60% of the Federation's heavy transport vessels, Zethara explained. Each day of downtime represents millions of credits and lost production and delayed deliveries across 47 star systems.
Federation Engineering Corps estimates 6 months minimum for conventional repair approaches. And they want us to do it faster than that?
They want us to do it better than that, Commander Yulfura interjected, reviewing the tactical aspects of the mission. The cascade failures were caused by a design flaw in the interconnection systems.
Even if conventional repairs succeed, the same problem will recur within months.
Marcus smiled, recognizing the type of challenge that had made construction work interesting for 20 years.
So we don't just fix the immediate problems.
We fix the underlying design issues that caused the problems in the first place. Chief Engineer Vexstar approached the command console, her forearms working on multiple data tablets as she analyzed the technical specifications. Foreman, the Rigel facilities use integration protocols that are 40 years old. They were designed for much smaller operations and have been expanded repeatedly without fundamental redesign. Sounds like a construction site that got out of hand, Marcus observed.
How long to reach Rigel?
18 hours at maximum warp, reported Navigator Hicksthal, a gasform Etherian whose species' natural affinity for three-dimensional space made them ideal for stellar navigation.
The Prometheus warp drive incorporates Federation technology with human adaptability principles.
We can maintain maximum speed indefinitely without the maintenance requirements of traditional systems. Marcus looked around at his crew, seeing the mixture of excitement and determination that characterized beings who had chosen to work on impossible problems.
All right, people. This is what we trained for.
18 hours to Rigel, and then we show the galaxy what the Prometheus can do when she puts her mind to it. The next 18 hours were a blur of preparation as the crew readied their equipment and refined their approach to the Rigel mission. The Prometheus fabrication systems worked continuously, producing specialized tools and components that might be needed for the complex repair and redesign work ahead. Dr. Silkara coordinated with the ship's analysis systems to develop a comprehensive understanding of the cascade failure patterns, while Chief Engineer Vexstar worked with her teams to design modular solutions that could be implemented rapidly without shutting down the remaining functional systems. Specialist Thekmore prepared defensive protocols, not because they expected combat, but because major shipbuilding facilities were valuable enough to attract pirates and raiders who might see the crisis as an opportunity. The Prometheus would protect the facilities while repairing them. Foreman Rodriguez, called Specialist Kixera, the environmental systems are configured to support work in the shipyard environments. We can establish safe working conditions for all crew members within any of the facility configurations. Marcus nodded, appreciating the thorough preparation that characterized his crew's approach to every mission.
Outstanding work, everyone.
Remember, our job isn't just to fix the Rigel facilities. Our job is to fix them so well that other facilities across the galaxy can benefit from what we learn. As the Prometheus dropped out of warp at the edge of the Rigel system, Marcus stood on the bridge looking at the massive orbital shipbuilding installations that represented one of the Federation's greatest engineering achievements.
3 of the 5 installations hung darkened, silent in space, their construction bays empty and their fabrication systems offline.
Impressive facilities, commented Commander Yulthara, studying the tactical displays that showed the scope and complexity of the shipyard operations.
They were impressive, Marcus corrected. By the time we're done with them, they're going to be revolutionary.
The Prometheus moved toward the disabled facilities, her hull bristling with construction equipment and her crew ready to turn a major industrial crisis into the foundation for the next generation of shipbuilding technology. The galaxy was about to learn that giving human engineers access to the Federation's most advanced facilities wasn't just a repair mission, it was an upgrade that would transform how the galaxy thought about large-scale construction. And, at the heart of it all was a construction foreman who had never seen a broken system he couldn't make work better than it had before it broke. 2 years after the Rigel shipyard restoration, Marcus Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the Federation flagship Unity, watching the largest fleet assembly in galactic history. Stretching across 3 star systems, more than 10,000 vessels bore the distinctive modifications that had become known as Rodriguez configuration, ships that could rebuild themselves, adapt to any threat, and turn any crisis into an opportunity for improvement. Foreman Rodriguez, said Fleet Admiral Kexthani, the Etherian commander whose gaseous form shimmered with barely contained excitement. The integration of human engineering principles across our fleet has exceeded every projection. Combat effectiveness has increased by 400%, maintenance costs have decreased by 60%, and mission success rates have reached unprecedented levels. Marcus nodded, still somewhat amazed by how rapidly his construction site philosophy had transformed galactic military and civilian operations.
Admiral, what you're seeing isn't just improved technology.
It's improved thinking. Every ship out there has a crew that knows they can fix anything, improve anything, and build anything they need to succeed.
The fleet assembly represented the culmination of the most ambitious engineering project in Federation history.
Every vessel from massive dreadnoughts to single-pilot scouts had been retrofitted with adaptive systems based on the principles first demonstrated at Mining Complex 7 and perfected aboard the Prometheus. More importantly, every crew had been trained in human problem-solving methodology. Dr. Silkera approached from across the observation deck, her crystalline form reflecting the lights of thousands of ships in rainbow patterns. The psychological impact has been as significant as the technological improvements. Crews no longer view equipment failures or unexpected challenges as mission-ending problems.
They view them as opportunities to demonstrate their engineering capabilities.
That's because they've learned what humans figured out a long time ago, Marcus replied. There's no such thing as an impossible problem.
There are just problems nobody has solved yet.
The transformation hadn't been limited to Federation forces. Word of human engineering capabilities had spread throughout the galaxy, leading to requests for assistance from species that had previously been hostile or isolationist. The Prometheus had become the flagship of a growing fleet of engineering vessels that operated across political boundaries, solving problems and spreading human construction philosophy wherever they went. Foreman Rodriguez, called Captain Shenwei, the human officer who had commanded Mining Complex 7 during the frozen Tempest crisis.
The Andromeda expedition is ready for final deployment authorization.
Marcus turned to examine the expedition fleet, 30 vessels designed specifically for long-range exploration and first contact situations. Unlike traditional exploration ships that relied on predetermined equipment and established protocols, the Andromeda vessels could literally build whatever they needed from raw materials and adapt to any situation they encountered.
What's the mission timeline, Captain?
18 months to reach the Andromeda galaxy, followed by indefinite exploration and contact operations, Chen replied.
Each vessel carries full fabrication capabilities and crews trained in Rodriguez methodology.
We're not just exploring unknown territory, we're prepared to establish permanent installations, conduct large-scale engineering projects, and provide assistance to any civilizations we encounter. The concept of sending human-trained engineering crews into a completely unknown galaxy would have been considered insane just 3 years earlier.
Now it seemed like the logical next step in the expansion of human construction philosophy across the universe.
Commander Yulthara drifted over from the tactical stations, her gaseous form taking on the structured patterns that indicated intense concentration. The expedition vessels incorporate every advancement we have developed since the Prometheus launch. They are essentially mobile civilizations capable of establishing advanced infrastructure anywhere in the galaxy. Marcus studied the expedition fleet with the satisfaction of someone whose methods had been validated on the largest possible scale.
Commander, those ships represent something more important than advanced technology.
They represent the idea that any problem can be solved if you approach it with the right attitude and sufficient determination. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the communication systems. Marcus moved to the central command console where Fleet Communications Officer Zedhara was coordinating with vessels across the assembled fleet. Foreman Rodriguez, we are receiving reports from the outer sensor networks, Zedhara reported, her compound eyes tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. Long-range detection systems have identified what appears to be a massive artificial structure approaching from beyond the galactic rim. Marcus studied the sensor data, noting the object's enormous size and, clearly artificial construction.
How massive are we talking, Chief?
Preliminary estimates suggest a structure approximately 50,000 kilometers in length with complex internal architecture, Zedhara replied. The object is traveling at significant sublight velocity and appears to be on an intercept course with the Outer Federation territories.
Admiral Kekstani moved to the tactical displays, her gaseous form brightening with concern.
An object of that size traveling at those velocities represents either an incredible engineering achievement or an unprecedented threat.
Possibly both.
Marcus examined the approaching object with the same analytical approach he had once applied to surveying construction sites. The structure's design suggested advanced engineering capabilities, but also showed signs of damage and inconsistent construction that indicated it might not be operating at optimal efficiency.
Admiral, I think we're looking at the galaxy's biggest engineering problem, Marcus said finally.
That thing is either going to need our help, or it's going to cause problems that need our help to solve.
Dr. Silkara studied the sensor readings with growing excitement. The construction techniques visible in the outer hull sections suggest a completely unknown approach to large-scale engineering. If this represents first contact with a previously unknown civilization, the technological exchange possibilities are extraordinary.
Or, Commander Yulthara pointed out, it represents first contact with a civilization whose engineering capabilities far exceed our own and whose intentions are completely unknown. Marcus smiled, recognizing the type of challenge that had made his career interesting. Either way, it sounds like a job for people who specialize in solving impossible problems. Admiral, recommend we dispatch the Prometheus and a support fleet to make contact and provide assistance if needed.
Admiral Kekstani consulted with her staff before responding.
Foreman Rodriguez, you would be approaching an object of unknown origin with unknown capabilities and unknown intentions.
The risk assessment for such a mission exceeds all established parameters.
Admiral, risk assessment assumes you know what you're dealing with, Marcus replied. We don't know what we're dealing with, which means we need to approach this like any other construction site, carefully, but with confidence that we can handle whatever we find. The debate was resolved when additional sensor data revealed that the massive object was not just approaching Federation space, it was actively transmitting distress signals in multiple frequencies and communication protocols.
Whatever civilization had built the structure, they needed help. Fleet deployment authorized, Admiral Kekstani announced.
The Prometheus will lead a contact and assistance fleet to intercept the unknown object.
Full engineering support, defensive escort, and diplomatic teams. Marcus nodded, already planning the mission approach with the methodical precision that characterized his handling of complex projects. We'll need fabrication ships, environmental specialists, and crews trained in adaptive construction techniques.
If that thing is as damaged as it looks, we're going to be doing major structural work in unknown conditions.
Captain Chen stepped forward. Foreman, the Beijing and Sao Paulo are both Rodriguez-configured heavy fabrication vessels with full construction capabilities.
Their crews have worked on projects ranging from asteroid mining installations to orbital city construction.
Perfect.
We'll also need the Tokyo for environmental systems and the Lagos for advanced materials fabrication, Marcus decided.
If we're going to help whoever built that thing, we need to be ready for engineering challenges we've never seen before. Dr. Silkara approached the mission planning station. Foreman Rodriguez, this contact situation represents an unprecedented opportunity to test human engineering principles against completely unknown technological paradigms.
Doc,
that's exactly what makes it interesting, Marcus replied. We've proven that human construction philosophy works within the Federation. Now we get to find out if it works against problems we've never imagined. The mission fleet assembled rapidly, 5 vessels representing the pinnacle of human-influenced Federation engineering preparing to make contact with a civilization that had built structures on a scale that dwarfed anything in known space. The Prometheus led the formation, her hull bristling with construction equipment and her crew ready to turn first contact into first cooperation. Foreman Rodriguez, Admiral Kexthani said formally, "You are authorized to provide whatever assistance is necessary to resolve this situation. Your mission parameters are limited only by the safety of your crews and the security of Federation territories." Marcus stood on the Prometheus bridge, looking at the massive object that represented either humanity's greatest engineering challenge or greatest opportunity. "Admiral, understood. We'll make contact, provide assistance, and probably learn a few things that will change how we think about what's possible." As the mission fleet departed for their rendezvous with the unknown, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him from a construction site in Detroit to the command of humanity's first interstellar engineering fleet. The galaxy had accepted human construction philosophy not because it was more advanced, but because it worked better than anything they had tried before. The approaching object represented the ultimate test of that philosophy. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, beings with the capability to build structures 50,000 kilometers long needed help from a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had learned to turn to humans when they encountered the truly impossible. And, as the Prometheus accelerated toward a challenge that would dwarf every previous human engineering achievement, Marcus Rodriguez maintained the calm confidence of someone who had never met a problem that couldn't be solved with enough determination, creativity, and the absolute refusal to accept that something couldn't be done. The galaxy was about to witness the ultimate demonstration of human engineering philosophy. When faced with the impossible, humans didn't just find a way to make it work, they found a way to make it work better than anyone thought possible. The age of human engineering supremacy was no longer just beginning, it had arrived, and the universe would never be the same. Behind them, 10,000 ships bearing Rodriguez configuration modifications stood ready to support whatever solution their foreman would devise. Ahead of them, the unknown waited to discover what humans could accomplish when they encountered a problem worthy of their capabilities. The legend that had begun with the frozen Tempest rescue was about to become the foundation of interstellar civilization itself.